the theme of this retreat, Love Amidst Impermanence. We're just going to change the context of it a little bit. Impermanence is truly one of the tenets, of course, of Buddhist philosophy. So we're going to talk about change, and I found this thing that Ramdas had written or said that really speaks to it. Is there a place to stand in relation to change where one is not frightened by it? Is there a place to stand in the presence of change where one can be with the changes, even enjoy the changes, work with the changes, and at the same moment cultivate equanimity, spaciousness, emptiness, awareness, and love? Ramdas. So I think that gets at the core of how we're going to characterize what we're going to do here today with Annie and RamDev and myself. And to start it off, we do have a wonderful piece from Ramdas that we're going to play. It's a video. And Ramdas used to tell this story a lot. A part of this video is this story about the farmer and his son. Mm-hmm. Everything seems to be going right, and then everything seems to be going wrong, rather. Which is right, right the first time.
But what I sensed, and in myself, I sensed that as long as I held my model of how I thought it should be, I kept finding myself suffering. And the minute I opened to how it is, something very profound changed in me. That as long as I kept having a model so that change was seen as a threat, I was in trouble. Because the nature of form in the universe is it's changing. Some of it's changing slow, some like rocks, some of it's changing fast, like your mind. But the universe is continuously in change. All form is in change. So when Christ says, "Lay not up your treasures where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves steal away," the implication is clear. If you invest in that which changes, you will suffer. Can you enjoy what changes without investing in it? Can you delight and celebrate the play of form without being trapped in a form? Because the form, the minute you identify with a form, it's going to change. Your body's changing. No matter how hard, that wonderful thing last night, where the description of the creams and the whole business and the dyeing of the hair and all in the 50s to hold on, that was a great image. Great image. But we all decay and rot away. Here today and gone tomorrow. And what a production we make out of it. We make such a big deal out of it. Can you feel how trapped we are in our melodramas? In our storyline, I'm going to stay me. And you can feel when people decide to stay me, how rigid they get, how tight. You can see it in the skin, you can see it in the bone structure, you can see it in the way they have opinions. There's a great line in the third Chinese patriarch of Zen. The first line of he wrote about 6 pages in his life, which is just, I wish I could do that. But you can understand, because it was very terse. He didn't make compromises, because the first line is, the great way is the great way, G, capital W. In other words, getting into A back there. The great way is not difficult. for those who have no preferences. Now it pushes you even harder. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Then it goes, the next line, but make the slightest distinction, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. In other words, you get caught in dualism. And that's just the first 3 lines. And there's 5 pages of it. Can you imagine that? What could be left? Just take, the great way is not difficult for one who has no preferences. Does that mean you don't have a preference? I mean, I wear this versus that. That's a preference? I've thought a lot about it, where you have no preferences. I realize it doesn't mean you don't have preferences. It means you don't have preferences. It's a double-level statement. It means, obviously, you have these preferences, but there's no attachment to the preference. I go to put on a shirt, and there's an ink stain, so I put on another shirt. How long will I be somebody who didn't put on that first shirt? How long do I hold on? What is the inertia? What's the latency time before you open to the new moment, to how it is? Oops, there goes my IRA. I mean, we're dealing with a monk who comes back and all of his stuff has been stolen, and he goes over to the window and he laughs and he said, "They didn't steal the moon." And things change, and the minute you grab hold and have inertia and attachment to your opinions, preferences, models, desires, how you think it's going to be, how you want it to come out, you are doomed to suffering. It's as simple as that. It's absolutely idiot simple. Clinging creates suffering. It's the Buddha's second noble truth. That's what he said, and he was right on. I mean, he just spent all these years. You don't have to do what he did, because he did it. He went and he fasted and, sat in water and stayed up nights and did all that stuff. And then he got enlightened. He saw the whole game. His mind went into A and rested there. Awareness, just the thing we were doing in the meditation this morning, the sky. He just became the sky. And he looked and he said, there is a lot of suffering inherent in form. And the cause of the suffering, not the pain and not all the stuff, the cause of the experience of suffering is due to the clinging of mind. The attraction or the aversion, the holding tight to it. Because it changes. The lovely story. It changes as swiftly as the flick of a horse's tail. This will be our horse day. Yesterday was our frog day. There's a farmer who has a horse, and the horse runs away. He's a very poor man, and the neighbor comes over and he says, "Oh, that's too bad." The farmer says, "You never know." And the next day, the horse comes back, and behind it, following it, is a beautiful wild stallion. And the neighbor says, "How fortunate." Farmer says, "You never know." The farmer's son decides to tame the horse. And in the process of taming the horse, he gets thrown off and his arm is broken. And the neighbor says, "That's too bad." And the farmer says, "You never know." Shortly thereafter, the Cossacks come through town conscripting all the young men. But they don't take anybody with things like broken arms. So they don't take his son. And the neighbor says, how fortunate. And the farmer says, and there we are. You never know. You never know. You never know. You never even know, in this case, you never even know whether suffering is grace, immediately or long term. I guarantee suffering is grace long term. But whether you experience it short term or not depends on how lightly you hold. So the word lightly becomes, for me, a prescription. Hold on lightly. Lightly, like delight. Enjoy delight. Just live lightly. Live lightly. The word dance is used, or lila. The dance or play of form. The play of form. Your body, your life, your relationships, all of it is the play of form. From the soul's point of view, now we're looking at it from the soul's point of view, this is all the dance of the creation of form.
You never know. That's a good mantra. So we were just discussing some of what we thought would be relevant. And not too long ago, we had a course, ran a course at Love, Serve, Remember, and one of the 10-day course, and we were talking about grief. And most everybody was thinking, okay, yeah, talk about personal grief. Someone died, lost a job, whatever it may be. And then in talking to RamDev, he said, yeah, well, there's a bigger picture, isn't there, given what's going on today with our environment degradation, our democratic degradation, the polarity that is so obviously tearing a fabric of this country. So he talked about collective grief, and I thought, yeah, right, we're not even considering how it's a twofold thing, the way we're in this together in grief, and yet that may be a way for us to transform. So I thought you'd talk about that a little bit.
For many years here in the West, generations, we felt that progress was our birthright, that you would have a bigger car than your father, going back to the Industrial Revolution. Every generation, things are getting better. Change, collectively, is a positive thing. But 20, 30 years ago, the dark underbelly of capitalism began to show itself. Pollution, etc. And right now, when we look at change, I've got a 23-year-old son, and he's saying, what's going to happen to me when I get out of school? How am I going to get a job, for instance? So, almost always when I talk to people, I think the same is true for most of us. People are talking about collective grief, right-wing populism, mass shootings, environmental degradation, on and on and on. Change resisted leads to grief, both individually and collectively. And it may very well be that what's being asked of us now as a society is to more consciously relate to our collective grief about all the stories that we're seeing all the time. We were promised, growing up, things will be better, the American dream. And we look at what's going on politically now, and there's a lot of talk about, we're going to make it better again. We're going to look back, and you won't have to be grieving. But grief is really healed by feeling grief, by creating community rituals to deal with grief. Trying to get away from grief only delays the healing, only perpetuates the pain. So, can we collectively, at least some of the time, instead of going into overload about how many difficult stories are coming to us and overloading our brains, as a few small people just said, let the head come down into the heart, which is one of the main teachings in Orthodox Christianity, letting the mind drop down into the heart. And when we're in the heart, it gives us then the possibility of being with grief and with change in a way that leads to healing. There's this profoundly wonderful line by Rumi where he says, grief is the garden of compassion. Grief are the difficult emotions that arise, individually or collectively, when we're lost in feelings of separateness. Sadness, anger, fear, all the ways the change, and particularly the change of separateness, is causing us to suffer. So one big chunk of the spiritual path is transmuting the feelings of grief and separation into feelings of connectedness, which is one of the defining qualities of compassion and compassion. Grief and separateness into connectedness and compassion. So we hear the stories of, I get the New York Times every day. I look at what the headline is, what has the president done today, what's happening in Venezuela, on and on and on. And change that I don't like, is happening. Do I get angry? Do I get lost in fear? Do I get lost in spinning mind? Or can I, in that moment, okay, here's what it's like to be RamDev in this moment where I'm reading news that hurts my heart. And can I really then drop into my body and be with it, have an intimate relationship with that sense of loss? Certainly this is not easy. Certainly this is not something I would ask you to do all day long. But as a practice of working with collective grief, finding community to support you, finding rituals to support you, and coming together with yourself, with other people, to transmute separateness into connectedness. As Raghu said a couple of days ago, as Thich Nhat Hanh said a few years ago, in this day and age, it is the Sangha, it is the community that is becoming the Buddha. And it really seems to me that with the intensity of change, the acceleration of change, not just change, but the amplitude of what it is that's changing, our fundamental view of what's going on in this country and in our lives and our children's lives, that this mega crisis, this poly crisis, so many crises coming together at the same time, what is really being almost demanded is transformation of consciousness. And that probably has to start with a group like us. Not that we're any more special than anybody else, but this is a community that has these teachings, has the blessings of the Dharma. We can do this together. Thank you.
So, I think you've seen Annie's book that's up there, right? Somehow, Thoughts on Love. So we got together this, you're not going to like this maybe, but we got together to just talk about, what we could talk about here. And so I had my breakfast and I set it down. I had these 2 huge pieces of toast. And the breakfast, it was going to get cold. And Annie said, well, let me butter this toast, because if you don't do it right away, it's not going to spread properly. Very practical. And she went ahead and did it, and it reminded me of something in the book, actually, and it refers to how RamDev just ended. And the strawberry jam. I'm so... And everything was completely covered. You know, sometimes you don't have enough jam or butter. She made sure of it. And she talks in the book, and you can talk a little bit more about it, about the little things that we all can do on a day-to-day basis that make a difference, which really sets off what RamDev was just talking about in terms of, here we are, a community. We can show each other these little bits of grace.
Yeah, it's what I live by. I love that line of Mother Teresa, that none of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. And I really live by that because, you know, we do what's possible. And people here are doing little things for me, and I'm surprised every time. Like little things they slip me, like little tchotchkes and little things that are precious to them. And it changes you molecularly to be gifted and graced by somebody's generosity. And so I try to do that every day. We do what's possible. You know, we pick up litter. And I want to start off by saying, like, yesterday I talked about the church of 80% sincerity, and I have a 80% willingness to even consider change and impermanence, but 20% of me just hates it and doesn't really agree to it. Like Dylan Thomas, rage against it. I don't like change. If in a perfect world, everything would be pretty much the same every day. I like 8 foods, and you can ask Neil. I'm not even exaggerating. I really and it's so challenging, and yet I've been radicalized a number of times. There have been different lily pads I've landed on where I've been radicalized and changed. The first one I can really think of is the women's movement. When I'm 16, when the first issue of Ms. Magazine comes out, and the message was, no more, no mas. We're here, and we are no longer going to pretend that it's okay. I just want to say, I know this makes me sound bitter, but the U.S. has still not, voted for the Equal Rights Amendment, right? It's 2025. And the women's movement radicalized me because every single thing I've been taught was to be as good as possible and to achieve as much as possible, and that was going to fill me and redeem me. That would be my value. And the women's movement taught me that the crying and the rage were going to be the way home. That I was going to do, that we were angry, that we had every reason to be angry, and that we had carried the rage of the men in our life and the self-loathing of the men in our lives, so that they could make a living, so that the ship of the family didn't sink, and that we were not going to be carrying that anymore, and that we were probably going to be crying a lot because we were incredibly sad about how our mothers had lived and what they had internalized about what pieces of shit they were because they hadn't kept their weight down or whatever. And women that were angry or sad, when I'm coming up, and this is the 50s and early 60s, women who are angry or sad are dubbed, they're told they're witches. And they're angry because their husbands are having affairs, because it's Hefner's coming into being and whatnot. And the anger, and they're heartbroken. They're heartbroken to have been disrespected and dissed at that level. And that was that was like my awakening. That was when the veil fell from my eyes, and then that we were going to be crying a lot and laughing a lot and eating a lot of lentils, lentil soup, and that those were going to be the way home, and they were. And I have always preached a sermon of crying as the way home, and it really ties in with everything Dale said. Like when I had an English mother, I've mentioned you really literally did not cry. You know, you ate the 5 Hershey bars, but you did not cry. We had problems when we brought home B pluses. I'm 35 when I discovered that a B plus is a good grade, but we don't cry. And I've always preached that the crying, it will bathe you, it will hydrate you, it'll moisturize you, it will baptize you. It is the river of Jordan, and it will grow whatever seeds those crazy birds have dropped at your feet, which you don't know what they are yet. So, and then I'm radicalized again when my dad gets sick and dies really early. I'm 23 when he gets sick. And then I get sober when I'm 32. And it was like, the message was, I wasn't a bad person trying to get well. I was a really sick person. And alcohol, they say, is but a symptom of the disease. And the disease was the ping pong game of K-fucked radio, where I'm different than, I've suffered more, I'm better than, I'm more erudite than, and then out of this speaker, I'm really worse than you. If you knew me, you would run screaming for your cute little life because I'm disgusting. And my secret life is like really appalling. I mean, I think even to Jesus, really. I think that's why sometimes Jesus has to lie down with a cold compress on his head. But anyway, so I have been changed against my will. And I have been grown against my will. And when I was growing, and I know this is true for a lot of you, I had severe growing pains. And I went from being very, very small, and I had terrible pain in my knees. And I spent one full summer, I grew 6 inches in just over a year, and I spent a summer like this, just, and I would not grow. I really object to change and impermanence. I mean, it doesn't matter because I'm a Christian, so it's fine. You don't have to do the impermanence thing. But
good luck.
But you just get grown. Like God, there's a bumper sticker I've seen in Texas. It says, God loves you exactly the way you are, and God loves you too much to let you stay like this.
I'm going to read something from the book, though.
Okay.
I didn't know you were a basketball fan.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
There's a flow among people gathered together for the common good, the flow of intuitively sensing who needs what. And it's a rare and exquisite flow. In basketball, they call this full court vision, where players know where their teammates are without looking. They know that so-and-so is running up the right-hand side toward the basket, and then they pass the ball behind their back to him or her. You saw Magic Johnson do this all the time, didn't we ever? Throw the ball over his head behind him, not even looking, just knowing his guy was coming. You see that kind of flow when people work together in food kitchens, in music and dance, where bodies express a reality in which the illusion of separateness disappears. We see and grok each other, intuit each other's humanity, even for a moment or two, and maybe in doing so, see our own. I like that.
Thank you.
It's really great, Annie.
Thank you.
Do you want to take it a little bit further in terms of community and how we do unveil ourselves to each other, which allows for a much deeper presence?
Well, at the risk of self-promotion here, the Living Dying Project is a community. And we have grief groups, we have support groups, literature over there on the table. But let me just say a little bit more about grief. Grief dares us to love again. Grief arises and our hearts can shrivel. This hurts too much. When something painful arises, there are three choices. One choice is to push it away. I don't want to feel this. I'm going to get busy. I'm going to get addicted. I'm going to take a drink. I'm going to stream Netflix all day. I just don't want to feel this. The second possibility is getting lost in it. I become the grief. I become whatever the emotion is. In English, we say, I am afraid. In Spanish, yo tengo miedo. I have fear. In Tibetan, fear is here. So just think about the way we language our thoughts. It makes it that much more difficult not to lose ourselves in emotions, become the emotion, rather than the sky in which the emotion is arising. And Pema Chodron has this great line. She says, would you rather be the weather or would you rather be the sky? The weather is always changing, right? It's a cloudy day, it's a rainy day, there's thunder, lightning. All these things are changing. What doesn't change? No matter who is the president, no matter what it is that's going on out there, what is it that doesn't change? That is the third response to grief, to open to it in such an expansive way that we feel the space in which it's arising from. Not pushing it away, not getting lost in it, feeling it, opening to it. And for many people, their hearts are never so open in their lives as when they are grieving. You can go to psychotherapy, you can go to meditation retreats, you can have an ayahuasca ceremony, you can do all those things. But if you are in deep grief, your heart is ripped open in a way that is almost unbearable. Can that brokenness, can that woundedness be used as a deep healing? As a meditation teacher, I guide practices, and I say things like breathe into your heart, feel your heart. And it always strikes me that we can feel our heart is open when it's going from 70% to 80%, right? But when you're grieving, your heart's 100% open or 98% open. Can we remember that brokenness and let the light shine in, as Leonard Cohen and everybody else has said? So grief is part of life. Everyone is grieving, everyone. It's often in the background to the point that we don't notice it. We just think this is the human condition. Everybody's going around a little bit so wounded that it's kind of dangerous to connect too much. Let me hide in my addiction. Let me hide in my separateness. And yet, in a way, grief is an invitation. Being around Maharaji, kind of like that thing you were just saying about, Annie was saying about that church, where
80%.
God loves you just the way you are, but He's gonna love you to improve. That's the function of the Guru. Big, huge picture of Maharaji behind me. And we talk about how great it was to be with Maharaji. It was also incredibly difficult. It was very challenging because it was so difficult to accept that grace, to really believe that somebody could love me and know who I was at the same time. Most of the people in this room have been practicing for a long time. And you're getting used to those places of inadequacy and fear and the places we hide in. What external shock does it take? What grief does it take? I mean, I kind of hope that 9/11 would collectively do something. Let's go shopping, right? Then maybe COVID could wake us up collectively. Didn't happen. What's the next one going to be? They're getting stronger. Okay, the next one, who knows? But do we have to wait?
Yeah, do we have to wait?
Yeah, we were talking this morning, I brought up that beautiful poem of T.S. Eliot's. It might be in Four Quartets, but I'm not sure, where he says, "Be still, my soul, and wait without hope, for hope would be hope of the wrong thing." And he says, "Be still, my soul, and wait without love, for love would be love of the wrong thing." And that's just so profound and mysterious to me. And he also talks about the still point that we find amidst the change and the swirl and the mystery, and that the still point, the dance is the still point. But I've always said, if we get what we pray for, we've really, really shortchanged ourselves. Because I pray, Dale and I were kind of laughing at this, I pray, everybody I know that's in 12-step recovery, our main prayer is that we just could feel a little bit different than we're currently feeling. That we're not tweaked or judgy or whatever. And it's funny because everything I know, everything I've learned, all the teachings I've ever heard, every practice I've ever done has said that we pray for our hearts to be open. That the acronym is Heart Open Peace Centers, Heart Open Peace Centers. But then I think of Duncan Trussell, and that when you first meet me, you're meeting my bodyguard. It's very hard to be human here. It's scary. I feel like, Cindy Lou Who sometimes. I feel like this tiny little being in the midst. So be still, my soul, and wait without hope. What I hope is that things will sort out the way I'm really positive they should for the commonwealth welfare. And to give that up is really scary for me. And yet I do it really imperfectly and trembling. And, it's a leap of faith that Kierkegaard talked about, that Abraham is told to take Isaac up to the mountain and sacrifice him to God, to Yahweh. And the most mysterious thing that ever happens in the Bible is that Abraham goes up to the mountain because he understands that he is so totally doomed without the love and the arms of God that it wouldn't matter if he didn't sacrifice Isaac, because they're just so fucked, just to paraphrase. And he gets there, and of course the angels come out of the thicket and they say, God has provided the lamb, and then that's a precursor of Jesus as the Lamb of God, or who takes away the sins of the world. But it's the leap of faith. I heard that when I was 18. I was in college very briefly, and we were talking about Kierkegaard. And when I heard it, I went from this kind of slight resistance to the whole God thing, because I was raised to be an intellectual, to getting it. That without that leap of faith, plugging my nose and saying, okay, fine, have at it, I was so completely doomed. And one more thing, when I first got sober, there's a very beautiful prayer in 12-step recovery where we turn our will and life over to the care of God as we understand God. But an old man took me aside and he said, I'll tell you, honey, the old timers, and at night there's a very beautiful flowery prayer of gratitude that you got through a day sober and whatnot. So he said, we wake up in the morning and we say, whatever. And then he said, and then when we lay our head down at night, we say, oh, well. So, wait, Neil, am I being lucid? I feel like I'm all over the place. Okay, so yeah, but I just want to say one more thing that Dale mentioned, the very, very famous song of Leonard Cohen's, where it says there's cracks in everything, that's how the light gets in. But the line I love even more, and that really has to do with the impermanence and the endless shifting sands that we find ourselves in that are not happy shifting sands. The line is, ring the bells that still can ring. And that's where I find hope. Is the bells that still can ring are what you guys have been talking about. It's in community. It's that this is where hope lies. This is where the Buddha will be. This is, if you want to feel really close to Jesus, just go hang out wherever the really poor people are. That's what Mother Teresa does, and she can make fun of her and write about her, whatever, for all of her her supposed self-interest. She sat on the street every single morning holding dying people in her head and stroking their faces because she's seeing in everybody Christ crucified. So what do? You show up and you hold people And that's all, one person at a time, that's all you can do. So you ring the bells. What bells still ring? Well, you know, community still rings and service, and we do soup kitchens when no one is looking, not on the days where there's cameras there. We do that we think we're so hungry or worried for what we're not getting, but we're so empty for what we're not giving. So what do? We just give it away like drunks, you know. We just give it away. We give what we have. Christ says it will be sevenfold return. Cast ye bread upon the waters, and it will be returned to you. Maybe it's the act of casting it in trust and the faith that it will return.
Yeah. Just hope.
Hope.
You know, we did a session at one of these retreats years ago with Roshi Joan Halifax, and we were talking about hope, and she interjected and said, I think we need to recharacterize this as wise hope.
Yes.
Because
Right.
hope is associated with an outcome, for most of us, especially in the West, with an outcome.
Yeah.
And if that outcome isn't met, then there's a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
She talked about wise hope,
Yeah.
where you're not looking for a return. And that characterized it as such. Thought, RamDev, on wise hope?
So Buddhists actually promote hopelessness. And the hopelessness is this moment cannot be any different from the way it is. If we're wanting this moment to be different, we're in big trouble because it is this way. So wise hope, I believe, grows out of hopelessness. That fully accepting this moment, setting our tent right here on this piece of ground in this moment, then we have the resources to, as skillfully and wisely and compassionately as possible, create hopeful change. And in some way, I really think that hopelessness involves the willingness to feel your grief, at least some of the time. I mean, like right now, if everybody in the room just for a moment just tunes into your body, into the sensations in your body.
Oh, thank you.
What, you're hot?
I got a fan.
Hot meditation. And can you feel that sense of loss? Can you feel that something isn't quite settled? That there isn't that hopelessness? There's an underlying baseline of this subtle kind of grief that you're waiting for the next shoe to drop or what's going to happen. And is it possible that to use these sensations, to have enough trust in what you invoke in Maharaji, in Christ, in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to have enough trust in that you can be with the unpleasantness of what it feels like to have grief in your body, being with it so intimately, so nakedly, that you can begin to feel your heart, that grief is daring you to love again, that even though you have lost so much, the heart is so much vaster than that. That you are that space, boundless spaciousness, love with a capital L. And how do we get there? By admitting the grief, by leaning into it. The nature of life is change. I've often looked at my own life after meditating for 50 years. My metaphor is I'm clinging to the side of a cliff and still not quite completely willing to let go. There's that wonderful Zen story about the guy who was out in the forest, and he noticed he was being chased by a tiger, and he knew the tiger was a lot faster than he was. So he said, how am I going to get out of this situation? And he noticed there was a cliff. He thought, if I go to the edge of the cliff and I hold on, the tiger can't get there, and he'll get bored and he'll go away. So he did that, and as he was holding on, he noticed that down below there were 2 tigers waiting at the bottom of the cliff. But right next to him, out of the side of the cliff, was a wild strawberry growing. He was just holding on to this vine. It was the only thing that was keeping him up. And a mouse came out and started gnawing on the vine that was holding him up. And he picked this strawberry with his free hand, put it in his mouth, and said, how sweet it tastes. Tiger above, 2 tigers below, mouse gnawing, how sweet it tastes. We're in that situation. Tigers above, tigers below. Mouse gnawing. RamDev had this wonderful metaphor that spiritual life is like jumping out of an airplane and realizing that partway down you don't have on a parachute. But a little further the way down, realizing it's okay because there's no ground. Do we find ourselves in that place between the no parachute and there might be ground, that the rocks might be coming up soon? Big grief. Can we get used to free fall? Can we love the free fall? Hanging on the edge of the cliff. Thank you.
So let me tell you the Christian version of that story.
Oh, I'm sure they have one.
Of course they do. The Christian version is that the woman falls off the cliff and grabs the vine and is holding on and praying, please, Lord, please, gentle shepherd, save me, save me. And she hears a voice from down below, and the voice says, just let go, my darling. I'm right here. I'll catch you forever, in all eternity. You're safe in my love, in my arms. Just let go. The woman thinks about this for a moment. She says, is there anybody else there? So let me tell you a couple of hope stories. Do you have something you want to do?
I want to read one thing from you.
Okay.
Because we've got to, I think we haven't gone far enough to characterize love, the love amidst change. Love is caring, affection, and friendliness, of course, compassion, and a generous heart. It is also some kind of energy or vibration because everything is the same stuff moving at different speeds, from glaciers to 6-year-old boys. I wish the movement of love in our lives more closely resembled the grace of a ballerina. But no, love mainly trumps and plops, falls over and tiptoes through our lives. Love looks like us, and that can be a little daunting. Love is why we are all here at all, on the couch and in the world, with a heart for the common good. Why we have hope and a lifeline when we don't.
Yeah.
That's good.
Hope. So we would say, or I would tell my Sunday school kids that we don't fixate on the hope that this or that happens, the hope that she loves me in return, the hope that this or that, the hope about the election, that this will happen. But we have a hope in the bells that still ring. We have hope in grace, the spiritual WD-40 that comes along with its long, thin red straw and spritzes into those clenched and stuck places and lets us breathe again and lets us fly. We have hope in the community. We have hope that we never have to be alone again. If we can bear that, it's like what Dale was saying with Maharaji, that just how kind of bizarre it is that somebody can see exactly who you are and adore you. Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote about how we have the public life, it's kind of curated. I let you know this stuff about me, I am this way around you in public, and then we have our private life, and a few people really know us, and they know that we're, in my case, ambitious or judgy, and then we have our secret life. And in that secret life, and I have heard so many people share about this here, there's just that secret terror about who we actually are, and that we are maybe disgusting, and that maybe we're repellent, but that is what Christ or Neem Karoli Baba would see that right off, that it was just it's a mixed grill, the beauty of that I'm a wee yogi, and that I'm, just this really shadow. I've got a shadow. I've got the human. I've got the dual identity. I've got two passports, my divine and my human. And the human is a little challenging some days. But I just want to tell you. But I know we're going to go to questions pretty soon. But I want to tell you two stories that are the hope I have. The bells that still can ring are that we can have awakenings, and that we are loved beyond all sense or proportion, and that we go to the source. We talk in 12-step. We don't go to the hardware store for bread. There's no bread there. They don't sell bread there. So we go to the source where there is bread, the bread of life. So one story, as I've told before, is Dale and I actually meet 36 years ago, which is half of my life, when I have a little tiny baby, and my very best friend since I'm 14 gets sick and is going to die. She has a metastatic breast cancer, and she's not going to heal from it. And Dale starts to work with her at the Living Dying Project, and that is how we first connect. Well, not too before Pammy dies, we go shopping. It's about 3 months before she dies, and she's in a wheelchair, and she has this wig on, and I have this boyfriend I'm kind of in my anorexia again, which I love and helps me feel very powerful, and the guy loves it. I weigh no pounds. I weigh more than 20 pounds. I mean, less than 20 pounds than I weigh now. I'm really thin and empowered by that. And the guy loves these tight clothes. And I dress like John Goodman most of the time, and so Pammy in her wheelchair and wig, and I go into this dress shop, and I buy this cute it's a lavender dress, and it's kind of tight on me. And I said to her, I come out of the dressing room tugging it down, and I said, do you think this makes me look heavy in the hips? Right, and she's going to die with it, leaving behind an 18-month-old daughter, so it's like a lot. It's a lot. And she looks at me with absolute love and compassion, those pure eyes, and she says, Annie, you don't have that kind of time. And I'm never the same after that.
Wow.
And the second story I want to tell is from 12-step recovery of a woman who has a very bad oral cancer, and she's had surgery, she's had chemo, she's had radiation. They've removed part of her jaw, they've removed teeth, they've removed bone, and she comes through it. Right? And she's alive, and her thing is gratitude. And the gratitude is that most mysterious and magnetic energy. If someone's doing gratitude, it's magnetic, and you just want to be like that when you grow up. Well, so about 7 years later, and she's sober, she always shares gratitude, she always shares life, and especially when life gets very lifey, she shares, she does real. And one day she shares that the cancer's come back. She's going to have to do it all over again. And when it comes back, it's not ideal, right? She's going to have to do the surgery. She's going to have to do the radiation. She's going to have to do the chemo again. So it's a women's group. Everybody starts doing what you do. And because you panic about your own death unless you've done the work. And you go, yeah. My cousin's hairdresser had that exact cancer. And what they did was they did oxygen therapy, and they did like this unborn baby kale, and they got over it, and they didn't need the chemo. And the woman just listened really nicely. really sweetly. And then she just waved it all away like cigarette smoke. And she said, you know what? God's got it. And so my sisters I go to this other program, as I mentioned, for people with tiny, tiny control issues. And they're all old. They're all my age. And when I turned 60, they gave me a medallion that says, God's got it. And I usually wear it, but I don't have it on today. Because, you know what? God's got it.
God's got it. We have time, a little bit of time here for a few questions if people are interested.
I think it's a question for RamDev, but I had an annual exam with my Western medicine doctor, and I said to her, I wish you could tell me when I'm going to die. And she said, how come? And I said, because then I'll know how to live each day. And what I didn't tell her was, I kind of want to know how much time I can lazy around versus getting to it.
Right.
And I wanted to, and she said, as she walked me down the hall, we were already parting, she said, just live your life. You could live to 100. And that's troubling to me not to have an answer. For that reason, I want to know when to kick in and be productive and become an activist and so forth. And the rabbi is answering my question with the words, this afternoon. And I would also like to hear RamDev's answer.
And the question is, you want to know when you're going to die, and is that a good
How to live not knowing when you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right? How to live not knowing how long you have here.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you, Annie, over and over and over for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as I said in my talk a couple days ago, one of the contemplations in Buddhism is you're going to die, but you don't know when. And if we knew, it would probably create a lot of stuff in the mind. I remember Stephen Levine saying, imagine that if you could live forever, how horrible that would be. Right? So that somehow not knowing can uncover the preciousness of each moment. Right? I mean, I'd kind of like to know so I could do financial planning. Right? It would make it a lot easier if I knew how many more years I need to do that kind of thing. But in terms of my practice, in terms of loving people and being alive, and not knowing if I'll ever see you ever again, then that unknowing is precious. And it involves faith, it involves trust, it involves that free falling through space without a parachute. Maharaji said, I'm always in communion with you. I try to remember that. I don't always remember that. But when I do remember that, then it changes all the uncertainty. God's got it, right? So your question is coming from your mind in some way. I'm not saying this in a pejorative sense. My mind has all kinds of questions for sure. And as the children were singing, as your doctor was saying, letting the mind drop into the heart, letting the thoughts be colored by the love of the heart, then that question takes on a very different tone, if you will. And that there's a richness in not knowing. There's a preciousness with each meeting. That each meeting is amazing. It's one of a kind. It will never happen again. I remember when I was in Tibet, and a dear friend of mine was on the journey with us, me and Roshi Joan, we were going around Mount Kailash. My friend was a photographer. And we stopped at some place so everybody could get out of the vehicles and pee on our way to the mountain. And she went to pee, and when she came back, it was time to leave, and She said, "Oh my God, I'm not going to get that photograph. It's such a great photograph." I said, "You can get it on the way back." And she said, "And it'll be a completely different photograph." I mean, know me, I thought it'd be the same picture like 2 weeks later. No, each moment is so precious, so precious. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramesh Radas.
Once again.
As Ramdas would sometimes say, let's cut to the chase. So I would like you to address the aspect of living completely in the present moment in relation to everything passing away into this impermanence. You know, Ramdas said, if you live fully in the present, you live in eternity. So this is about our relationship to time and form.
Who are you asking?
If you live in the moment, RamDev,
who are you asking?
I don't care.
Okay. You want to take that?
Well, you know, you just do. You know, you keep, it was like, it is a church of 80% sincerity, and you keep changing channels from K-Fucked radio to the Ram Dass heart breath meditation, and then you start thinking about how much your butt itches and that it's probably cancer, and then you hear a sound that is just so sweet and lovely, and you perk up for a minute and you listen to that, and I mean, the human part of this dual citizenship is just really confusing and hard for me. And so I have a mantra from the Eastern Orthodox tradition, although I'm a nice Presbyterian Sunday school teacher, you know, God's frozen chosen. And, and the mantra is, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. And I say it 1,000 times a day. And this Daoshin priest I mentioned yesterday, who said the point is not to try harder, but to resist less, he also pointed out to me, again, 30 years ago, that it's the wonder, the miracle that Jesus, the sweet shepherd, has mercy on me. Like, what else do I need? Lord Jesus, you have mercy on me. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I remember Krishna Das a couple years ago, something very, very bad. I think it was a huge school shooting. I think it was an unusually horrible shooting, not that they all aren't. And it was during one of his chat and chai things. And he said, how do we even bear it? How do we keep coming back to God in breath? He said, you know, I don't have a clue. I just know to keep going around the world singing the name of God. And I just don't have a clue except to do small things with great love, and that I think I'm so hungry to get more of stuff. If I find a pair of pants that I really love and that I look cute in, the most important thing, that I should immediately get 2 pairs for when the first pair, right? That is my default. And then the thing, I use the red rubber band a lot, and I snap it very gently, and that snaps me back to breath, and that snaps me back to God, and back to mercy, and back to hope, and back to the truth of my spiritual identity, that I'm a wee yogi. And, you know, and then I make sure that, you know, in 12-step recovery, they use the acronym HALT a lot for the newcomers: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I check in. That's what radical self-love looks like to me. I get myself a cup of tea and I check in. The awareness, the AAA, awareness, acceptance, action. The awareness is, I'm really hungry. I'm just really angry, really lonely. I'm in that isolation. And I'm really exhausted. I need a nap. And, you know, Jesus, very big, Jesus in his distressing guise as Jewish mother is always getting people to go down to the beach and eat. Like he's all, you know, the whiny disciples are always, when's it going to be our turn, Lord? You know, I hate this. And he always says, go down to the beach. Someone's going to bring fish in. You seem very tense right now. Why don't you eat? And he says, I'm going to go off. I'm going to go to the mountain. I'm going to pray. I'm going to meditate. We'll talk later. Right? So I do the most human, merely being things. I touch you will see me, I touch myself, like I touch you. I might sneak up behind you because I don't have a single thing with you except love. I just adore you. And so I might sneak up to you or Kate and just put just touch you as connected, divine connection. And I do that with me. And so I don't have an answer. I believe both of the guys, I believe all of you DOS brothers would have the answer. But I can't answer it any better than that.
That's great, man. Great.
Another question.
One more question, quickly, because we're over the lunch line. No.
Oh no, they're duking it out in the question line. Okay, you go.
So you were talking earlier about how grief cracks our hearts open. And I think in this community, when you say that, we understand the benefit of that. And I'm wondering about how to, when it's well received, share some of that with, so for example, I have a very close friend whose husband died about 1.5 years ago. And though she's going through the steps and living her life, she's bereft. And she has no spiritual beliefs or traditions, particularly. And I'm curious about a way to share this knowing that I intuitively have with someone who's not in this world.
Right.
Community, no? I mean, that's the first start of anything, is just getting with her and other friends and just sharing, her deepest feelings and the way she feels separateness now.
Well, I should say she has tremendous community around her. She lives far away, so I don't see her that often. She doesn't always talk on the phone.
Well, that's good.
So I used to work closely with RamDev. I was the director of the Hanuman Foundation. And we did a retreat. There's this woman from rural Canada who really loved everything we did, all the meditations, and she wrote a letter. She was concerned about going home because her parents were very conservative Christians, and she really loved Buddhism. And she wrote this letter saying, I came back home and my parents hate me when I'm a Buddhist and they love me when I'm a Buddha. And to the extent that you can be with your friend and meet that place of wholeness, that's the best thing you can do. When I was more of like a seeker and collecting teachings and all these lamas and yogis and swamis and roshis and peers and everybody was coming through the Bay Area, I had my test question that I asked all the teachers. And the test question was, suppose I had a friend who was dying and he'd never meditated and he was really afraid. What would be the best thing I could do for him? Mm-hmm. And almost all of them gave the same answer, which boiled down to, you don't deal with his illness, or in this case, the grief. You don't deal with the brokenness. You don't even deal with the person. You're dealing with the illusion of separateness. And you merge your mind into the one mind, and then you merge your mind with the mind of your friend. She won't be alone then. She'll be in a community of you and her and God, right? So that Maya Angelou or somebody said, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, they'll never forget how you made them feel. And Maharaji, I mean, I could tell the story about the price of milk that probably everybody in the room has heard me tell, but a lot of times
tell it again. So.
It was not what he was saying. It was that sense of transmission that all of us are doing all of the time, whether we want to or not, right? And most people, when somebody's lost in grief, pull back because your grief is telling me that I'm going to be grieving, I'm going to be dying. I don't want to get too close to that. Can you be completely open and realize that she's grieving and you're relating to the place in her that's whole? So that you're doing kind of guru yoga, you being the guru, if you will, with a small g maybe in the guru part of it. And to me, that's the deepest practice of healing.
Yeah.
Let me add one line of Adya Shanti to what Dale just said, which is he said, the part of you that sees you're afraid isn't afraid. And so there's a part of her that sees herself in oceanic grief, but it isn't. And we show up, 90% of life is we show up, we don't know what to do, we sit there and we don't try to get people to feel better, and we breathe with them and we get them water and we don't run. Thank you, everybody, really beautiful. Thank you.